YouTube, been a while, eh? Going to be a couple of videos now to finish them off. Dick, that is, we're going to finish off. Unfortunately, it's been about a week and a half since my last video, mainly due to drinking and romancing. So I'll carry on now. Enjoy.
And Charles Darwin, just think about this just for a second, Charles Darwin actually admitted that the evolution of the eye was a real problem. And this is what he said: to suppose that the eye, with all its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for emitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection, seems, said Charles Darwin, I freely confess, absurd in the highest degree. I'll say that again. Charles Darwin says, I freely confess, it's absurd in the highest degree. And then he goes on to say, if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. Well, as you said just a while ago, Yemi, we now actually know a great deal more about, say, eyes and nerves and brain, the brain.
Okay, Dick, I'm going to throw out a quick hypothesis here on how the eye formed. This is how the eye formed on my hypothesis. A living multicellular creature developed a photosensitive cell. With this single cell, it could detect light and dark and see vague, blurry shapes. This enabled it to survive better than those of the species with no eye cells. Then, say millions of years later, this species develops two photosensitive cells, which gives it a clearer detection of light and dark, and allows it to see clearer, blurry shapes. Now, repeat and repeat and repeat, and the eye starts to form as you see it today. If, for example, the cells could form into a concave shape, allowing it to see better. So yeah, it's fairly easy to understand how the eye evolved using that sort of hypothesis. And people are studying it every day. You, Dick, are talking bollocks.
Cells and the DNA, and we now know that these are very, very sophisticated and could not have happened by chance. And so, Mr. Charles Darwin, yes, your theory is absurd by using your own words. That's what I think.
So would you say that creation then is a miracle?
Absolutely. It is totally a miracle. The creation of the universe is a miracle. The creation of you and me is a miracle. Let's just go through these slides again. The creation of planet Earth. Well, the Earth hangs in space.
Yes, folks, that's all we get on evolution. So now we're going to creationism. And the only reason I'm not stopping the video here is because it's hilarious what he says, and I'm going to just carry on with it. Enjoy from this point on.
It's beautiful. But the thing is that in order for life to survive on planet Earth, there are actually millions of what we call parameters. They're all examples of what they call irreducible complexity.
Actually, Dick, all you need to have life is heat, water and food. It's that simple. I can say that because bacteria, the simplest life forms, are single-cellular organisms much like bacteria, and all they need to survive is heat, water and food. So fuck your millions of parameters. That's all you need for life on Earth. And perfect life, there's no such thing.
And they're to do with the temperature, the rotation period of the Earth, the oxygen content, the CO2 content, the magnetic field, the gravity.
Also, as a doctor, Dick, you'd have studied biology. Here's a quick lesson again to remember your biology. Carbon dioxide is not provided by plants. Carbon dioxide is used by plants. You're a stupid motherfucker, aren't you? Because it's oxygen that green-leafed plants provide. A tool.
Gravitational field, the food available for mankind, the fresh water available for mankind, the shielding from X-rays and gamma rays from outer space, and actually millions of other things, and they're all interdependent. So there we are.
Interesting. So what scientific evidence is there for a young 6,000-year-old Earth then?
Well, do you know, there's a huge amount of evidence. You know, the evolutionists, they love to say, go to see the Natural History Museum and look at this 20 billion year old universe and the 4 billion year old Earth, but actually what you're looking at isn't a 20 billion year old universe. It's not a 4 billion year old Earth. Not if you actually look at it.
Mounds of evidence which you haven't shown us, and no one has ever been able to show us evidence of this young Earth shite. Go back to school, Dick.
Through scientific eyes. The thing is that because people have been to university and school, they're prejudiced in their minds that, you know, dinosaurs arose 20 billion years ago, whatever it is, 4 billion years, I don't know.
Dick, you went to school. You went to uni. You're prejudiced against evolution. How does that work for your argument? It is organised religion that prejudices the mind against experience and new things. It's science that opens the mind. And that's why education in universities and schools, high schools, are all important. So fuck off.
Let's just look at the actual scientific evidence. Starting off with the moon. Now the moon moves away from the Earth by about 1.5 inches every year. Say roughly 2 inches a year, but it's roughly about 1.5. It varies from year to year. And the moon is 238,000 miles from the Earth, approximately. It varies all the time. Now, the thing is that on this Earth we have tides. And the tides are caused by the magnetic attraction of the moon. Now, can you see on that picture there, the moon is on the right, and all that big weight of water is attracted towards the moon, and that's where you get a high tide. Now, remember I told you that the moon is moving away from the Earth, which means...
I'm going to give the not-so-quick reading of why high tides are caused by the moon, or rather, water is affected by the moon. You see, the high and low tides are caused by gravitational forces between the Earth and the moon. However, the source of the real effect takes some explaining to grasp, so here we go. The incorrect way of thinking is that the moon attracts all water to itself, therefore causing a high tide on one side of the Earth, close to the moon, much like Dick is thinking, and a low tide on the other side. However, if this was the case, there would just be one high tide per day, but there are actually 2 high tides a day. The reason is, the part of the Earth both away from the moon and close to the moon both get high tides. Now we need to explain why this is so. Well, the Earth and the moon rotate around each other, each pulling towards itself. The moon attracts every piece of matter on the Earth. Since gravity is inversely proportional to the square distance, the force is greater on the side of the Earth closer to the moon, and lesser on the side of the Earth moving away from the moon. Since the Earth is quite a rigid object, the differences in the force fails to deform the Earth by much. However, it succeeds well in deforming the oceans, which are not as rigid, and since the waters on the moon's side are attracted more strongly than average, they tend to bulge towards the moon, hence causing a high tide. The waters on the opposite side of the moon, since they are attracted less strongly than the average, tend to lag behind the rigid Earth and bulge away from the moon, which in this case is also away from the Earth, and again causing a high tide. Low tide occurs about right angles to the moon, where the force on the waters match the average pull of the moon on the Earth closely. The question that usually follows is this: why doesn't the sun cause any tides comparable to that of the moon, although its pull on the Earth is larger? Well, the answer is, although the gravitational pull of the sun on the Earth is larger than that of the moon, due to the much greater distance, the force changes very little from one end of the Earth to the other, and since it was a difference in force than the average magnitude of the force that matters from creating tides, the net effect is much less than for that for the moon. And that was an answer given to me by Yasar Safkan, PhD in MIT, software engineer, Istanbul, Turkey. Cheers, bud. Because my ramblings would have probably been less scientific. But there we go, there's your answer.
Means that it's getting closer. Let's go back to that slide again. It means it's getting closer. So, 6,000...
Now, as some of you may have guessed during this series, I'm not much of a physicist, certainly not an astrophysicist. However, I'm fairly sure that that is not the inverse square law when applied to gravitation. So after a quick search, this is what I found. The gravitational attraction forces between the 2 point masses is directly proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of their separation distance. The force is always attractive and acts along the lines joining them joining them from their centre. Now, I'm fairly sure nowhere in that does it say that as something gets further away, it gets closer like Dick just did. What an idiot. I mean, seriously. Something's getting further away, so it must be getting closer. Tool.
6,000 years ago, well actually 6,000 years ago when Adam and Eve were created, it was before the flood, so there wasn't all that water around. But there would have been, suppose there was a lot of water around, then the tides would have been a little bit higher than they are now. Not a lot, just a little bit. But 4 billion years ago, when the Earth is supposed to have been evolved by chance.
Did he really just say the Earth evolved by chance? I mean, really, the Earth evolved. Come on, Dick.
That moon would have been much, much closer. It would mean...
Why, yes, it would, Dick. You see, the moon was created by a dwarf planetoid smashing into Earth when the Earth was in a molten state. Note I said molten state, Dick. No water yet, just molten rock and metal, generally known as magma. The Earth was still forming when the moon was formed, you dickhead.
You'd have huge tides, 2 or 3 miles high, twice a day. Twice a day, massive tsunamis, wiping everybody on the planet out twice a day. Because we have a thing called the inverse square law. I won't really go into it, but it basically means that the closer the moon is, the higher the tide. By a great...
Yes, folks, it's face slapping time. Anyway, that's where I'm ending this, because I'm running out of time. But, yeah, I've still got the rest of this video to do, but I might end the series after all, after a couple more videos, if I've got more to do. This is just getting ridiculous. Anyway, I'll try and make sure it's not as long next time until my next video. Ciao.